breaking overnight. A massive federal operation targets two high-profile judges in a stunning raid.
Today, we announce the most significant judicial corruption case in American history. Twin federal judges, operating as assets of an international narcotics syndicate, have been taken into federal custody. The scope of their betrayal is beyond anything we have ever seen. Those words came from a podium in Washington at 11:47 a.m. Eastern Time. Behind the speaker, a wall of evidence photographs, stacks of heroin bricks, seized ledgers, encrypted phones, wire transfer receipts totaling numbers that shouldn't exist outside of sovereign debt discussions. Here are the facts. 9.64 tons of heroin, $4.8 billion in fraudulent financial transfers, 2 federal judges, 1 shared bloodline, and a network that stretched from the courtrooms of Minneapolis to the poppy fields of East Africa and the cargo ports of the Arabian Peninsula. This is not a story about corruption. This is a story about infiltration, about a parallel justice system designed to protect traffickers, launder billions, and ensure that an entire drug empire operated with courtroom immunity. And what you've heard so far is only the beginning, because what investigators found inside those servers didn't just expose 2 judges. It exposed a decade-long operation to turn the American Midwest into a protected transit corridor for one of the fastest-growing narcotics networks on the planet. Stay with me, because this goes deeper than anyone imagined. 4:17 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. February cold. The kind that freezes the air in your lungs before you can exhale. Streets empty except for the occasional cab crawling toward downtown. Streetlights casting orange halos through the frost. The Mississippi River a dark ribbon cutting through the city, its surface steaming in the pre-dawn freeze. Most of the city was asleep, but in 6 locations scattered across the metro area, federal agents were already in position. FBI tactical teams, ICE Homeland Security investigations units, DEA strike squads, U.S. Marshals, all of them coordinated through a joint operations center that had been running silent for 11 days. The operation had a name, Project Mogadishu Gate, and at 4:17 a.m., it went live. The first breach happened in Bloomington, a nondescript office complex near the Mall of America. To anyone walking past, it looked like an immigration services consultancy. The sign on the door said, Gateway Resettlement Partners. Inside, federal agents found something very different. 3 shipping containers worth of documentation, fake asylum applications, forged social security cards, employment records for people who didn't exist. And in the basement, behind a reinforced steel door, 17 kilos of uncut heroin wrapped in vacuum-sealed plastic, stamped with a crescent moon symbol that DA analysts have been tracking for 3 years. At 4:23 a.m., the second team hit a residence in Edina, a $4 million home in one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the state. The owner on paper was a non-profit foundation focused on refugee education. The actual resident was a woman named Fadumo Eagle, and she would later be identified as the chief financial architect of a money laundering operation that moved over $2 billion through Minneapolis real estate in 8 years. She tried to run, made it as far as her garage before IC agents cut her off. In her hand, a burner phone with 1 contact saved. The contact was labeled simply Judge H. At 4:31 a.m., the main event, 2 simultaneous raids, 2 addresses, 2 judges. The Honorable Hassan Abdi, federal district judge, District of Minnesota, appointed 7 years ago, praised for his work on immigration cases, known for his leniency toward asylum seekers and his harsh treatment of deportation orders. The Honorable Hussein Abdi, his twin brother, state court judge, Hennepin County, 15 years on the bench, respected, connected, a regular speaker at legal conferences about immigrant rights and judicial fairness. Both men were pulled from their beds at exactly the same moment. Both men said nothing. Both men were placed in separate vehicles and driven to the federal building in downtown Minneapolis, where they would spend the next 72 hours answering questions they had spent a decade making sure no one would ever ask. What agents found inside their homes would take weeks to fully catalog. In Hassan's study, a floor safe containing $900,000 in cash, bundled in $10,000 stacks with Ethiopian central bank bands still attached. On his computer, encrypted communications with shipping coordinators in Djibouti, Mombasa, and Dubai. A contact list with over 40 names, including port officials, customs brokers, and 3 sitting members of the Minnesota State Legislature. In Hussein's basement, something worse. A server rack, 8 machines running continuously, connected to a satellite uplink. When cyber forensics teams cracked the encryption, they found themselves looking at the command and control center for a narcotics distribution network that covered 11 states. They called it the Crescent Corridor, and the Abdi brothers had been running it from their courtrooms for over a decade. 9:14 a.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Laboratory, Chicago Field Office. The servers from Hussein Abdi's basement arrived under armed escort.
4 hard drives, 2 terabytes of data each.
All of it encrypted with military-grade protocols that should have taken months to crack. It took the FBI specialists 6 hours. What they found changed the scope of the investigation entirely. The first layer was financial. Shell companies registered in Delaware, Wyoming, and Nevada. Ghost corporations in the Cayman Islands, Malta, and the UAE. Money flowing through halal meat processing plants, used car dealerships, trucking companies, and a chain of coffee shops across the Twin Cities. But that was just the surface. The second layer was operational. Detailed shipping manifests for cargo containers moving through the Port of Houston, the Port of Los Angeles, and a smaller facility in Duluth that no one had been watching. Each container was logged, tracked, and scheduled, each one carrying between 500 and 2,000 kilos of heroin hidden inside legitimate goods like textiles, coffee beans, and automotive parts. The origin points were all East African:
Djibouti, Mombasa, Mogadishu.
The heroin itself came from Afghanistan, processed in Somalia, and shipped through a network that had been operating undetected for over 12 years. The third layer was the one that made federal prosecutors stop breathing: a file labeled Protected Assets.
Inside, a list of names: state legislators, city council members, police sergeants,
immigration officials,
border agents.
And at the top of the list, marked with a gold star icon, the names Hassan Abdi and Hussein Abdi.
Beside each name, a number.
The total amount paid to that individual since their recruitment. The Abdi brothers had each received over $47 million. But they weren't just recipients. They were directors. Every major decision in the network ran through their encrypted authorization. Every shipment required their digital signature. Every law enforcement inquiry that got too close was flagged, and the brothers used their positions to ensure it went nowhere. They didn't just protect the Crescent Corridor, they designed it. They built its legal immunity from the inside. And they did it while wearing robes and swearing oaths to uphold the Constitution. This was not corruption. This was command-level collusion. And the network was larger than anyone had suspected.
6 a.m. the next morning,
Joint Task Force Command Center, Fort Snelling, Minnesota. A digital map filled the main screen. Red markers pulsing across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and stretching down through Missouri and Kansas. Each marker represented a Crescent Corridor asset:
a warehouse, a distribution point, a compromised official, a money laundering front.
There were over 200 markers. The man standing at the podium was a fictional figure named Director Charles Brennan, head of the Joint Task Force. Behind him, representatives from FBI, DEA, ICE, DHS, and the U.S. Marshals Service. In the next 6 hours, he said, we will execute the largest coordinated narcotics interdiction operation in Midwest history. Over 800 federal agents,
47 SWAT teams,
air support from DHS, naval assets monitoring the Great Lakes shipping lanes. This is not a raid. This is an eradication.
At 6:14 a.m., the operation began.
In Fargo, North Dakota, agents hit a grain elevator that had been converted into a heroin processing facility. Inside, they found 1,400 kilos of raw product, industrial pill presses, and enough fentanyl precursor to kill every person in the state twice over.
12 suspects, all taken alive.
In Des Moines, Iowa, a trucking company called Heartland Freight Solutions was surrounded by FBI tactical teams. The owner tried to destroy records by setting fire to his office.
He failed.
Agents recovered shipping logs showing that over 3 tons of heroin had passed through his facility in the last 18 months alone. In Chicago, a luxury high-rise in the Gold Coast neighborhood was raided by a joint FBI-DA team. The penthouse belonged to a man named Mahad Yusuf, identified in the seized files as the network's primary logistics coordinator. He had diplomatic contacts in 4 countries and wire transfers totaling over $600 million.
He tried to negotiate,
offered the location of 2 more processing facilities in exchange for immunity.
He was denied.
In his safe, agents found a satellite phone with direct lines to the Abdi brothers and a USB drive containing the network's entire shipping schedule for the next 6 months. In Milwaukee, St. Paul, Omaha, Kansas City, Sioux Falls, the story repeated.
Warehouses breached, safe houses emptied, cash seized by the pallet, heroin by the ton,
fentanyl pills by the million. By noon, the task force had executed over 160 raids across 11 states. They had seized 9.64 tons of heroin, 2.1 million fentanyl pills, 800 kilos of methamphetamine, and over $300 million in cash. They had arrested over 400 individuals: drug couriers, money launderers, distribution coordinators, corrupt officials. And at the center of it all, the Abdi brothers, sitting in separate interrogation rooms, saying nothing. The Midwest underworld had just taken more damage in 6 hours than in the previous 6 years combined. But the arrests didn't stop there. When investigators began examining the financial records recovered from the raids, they found something that shifted the investigation from narcotics interdiction to something far more disturbing. A pattern. Every time a major shipment entered the United States, certain law enforcement activities in the target region went quiet. Patrol routes were changed. Inspection schedules were altered. Tips to federal agencies were flagged as low priority and never followed up.
It wasn't coincidence. It was coordination.
Inside the protected assets file, investigators found detailed records of payments to over 70 law enforcement officers across the Midwest. Some were patrol deputies who looked the other way during scheduled delivery windows. Some were supervisors who ensured that certain investigations never gained traction. Some were federal agents who leaked raid schedules and witness identities.
One name stood out.
Sergeant Major Derek Holloway, a 20-year veteran of the Minnesota State Patrol and the commander of a highway interdiction unit that should have caught dozens of Crescent Corridor shipments. He had never caught a single one. His bank records showed deposits totaling over $2 million from shell companies linked to the network. His patrol logs showed systematic gaps during known delivery windows. His personal phone contained direct communications with Hussein Abdi, including one message that read, "Package arriving Thursday. Keep the 94 corridor clear." He was arrested at his home in Stillwater.
He didn't resist. He didn't seem surprised.
He asked only one question as agents put him in handcuffs. How did you get past the judges? The answer, of course, was that they had gone through them. Across the region, the pattern repeated.
Deputy sheriffs,
Highway patrol officers,
port inspectors,
immigration officials, all of them identified, all of them arrested, all of them paid by a network that had spent over a decade building a parallel enforcement structure designed to protect drug trafficking operations. This was not a few bad apples. This was a second police force.
a shadow system,
An entire apparatus of protection that existed solely to ensure that heroin flowed freely from East Africa to American streets. And the men who built it wore judicial robes. The financial fraud component took investigators in a different direction entirely. The $4.8 billion in fraudulent transfers wasn't just drug money. It was a systematic looting of federal programs designed to help refugees and immigrants. The Abdi network had created over 300 fake nonprofit organizations,
refugee assistance programs, job training centers,
housing assistance foundations, all of them receiving federal grants, all of them filing fraudulent expense reports, all of them funneling money directly into the Crescent Corridor's operational accounts. Investigators found grant applications totaling over $2 billion from the Department of Health and Human Services alone. Applications for refugee resettlement programs that never resettled anyone. Applications for job training programs that never trained anyone. Applications for housing assistance that went to properties owned by shell companies controlled by the network. The fraud was elegant in its simplicity.
create a nonprofit,
Apply for federal grants. File paperwork showing services rendered.
receive funds,
Transfer funds to offshore accounts.
repeat,
For over a decade, American taxpayers had been funding a narcotics empire without knowing it, and the judges had made it possible. Every grant application, every audit inquiry, every legal challenge, all of it filtered through a system where the Abdi brothers could ensure that nothing was ever examined too closely. When one nonprofit was flagged for audit in 2019, Hassan Abdi personally intervened in the case, ruling that the audit was based on discriminatory profiling and ordering it stopped. The nonprofit continued operating for another 4 years, receiving over $60 million in additional federal funds. When an immigration fraud case threatened to expose a key network coordinator in 2021, Hussein Abdi dismissed the charges on procedural grounds, citing improper evidence collection. The coordinator was released and continued managing distribution operations across 3 states. This was not judicial error.
this was judicial sabotage,
A deliberate corruption of the legal system to protect a criminal enterprise. The scope of the network's ambitions became clear when analysts examined the final layer of encrypted files, a document labeled Expansion Protocol. Inside, a 10-year plan to transform the American Midwest into the permanent logistics hub for East African heroin distribution across North America. The plan called for the recruitment of additional judges in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. The establishment of processing facilities in rural areas with minimal law enforcement presence. The creation of legitimate business fronts that could absorb unlimited quantities of laundered money. And at the center of it all, a political strategy. The document outlined plans to support candidates at the state and local level who would be sympathetic to the network's interests. Not through direct bribery, but through campaign contributions from the hundreds of shell nonprofits the network controlled, through community organizing efforts that would build political capital, through a systematic effort to place network-aligned individuals in positions of influence across the region. The goal was not just to traffic drugs. The goal was to build a permanent infrastructure of protection, a system so deeply embedded in the political and legal landscape that it could never be dismantled. They called it institutional integration. And if the operation had continued for another 5 years, analysts believed it would have succeeded. The investigation continues. Trials are pending. The full scope of the network's activities may take years to uncover. But there are lessons here that cannot wait. Power does not always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it files paperwork. Sometimes it wears a robe and swears an oath it never intended to keep. The Abdi brothers did not seize power through force. They accumulated it through patience, through credentials, through the slow, methodical corruption of systems designed to protect the innocent. And in the end, that made them more dangerous than any cartel boss with an army. Because they didn't need soldiers. They had signatures. They didn't need guns. They had gavels. The cost of their operation cannot be measured in dollars alone.
9.64 tons of heroin. Enough to kill millions.
Enough to destroy families. Enough to hollow out entire communities already struggling with addiction and poverty. That is the true cost of corruption.
Not the money stolen.
Not the laws broken, but the lives lost while those sworn to protect them counted their payments. If you're still watching, tap the like button so more people see this story. Share it. Comment expose if you want stories like this dragged into the light. This is a fictional dramatization, but the systems it describes are real. The vulnerabilities are real. The threat of institutional corruption is real, and the only thing that stops it is exposure.
Stay vigilant, stay informed,
and never assume that the people in power are the people protecting you, because sometimes they're protecting.